And hopefully, a few more people join us. We're good quorum. Thank all of you who are here on time. I hope I gave you enough time to throw something into your stomach before you got here. As I pointed out before, even though it's live, I shouldn't advertise, but I have a little bit of cereal in a plastic thing that is dry for my lunch. Yum. Okay, this is the meeting of the Education Subcommittee of Ways and Means. We're meeting on the 28th of February, not the last day of February this year. And it's 12:46, and we are going to take up 4 bills today. We're going to start with House Bill 760, which is a bill that was presented by Delegate Palakovich-Carr. She has offered an amendment, and we have taken it. It pretty much strikes her initial idea for the bill and comes to this. The audits are done on a 6-year cycle. If a school system has a citation in their audit, they need to, at the next 6-year cycle, they got a lot of time to address that, and so that it doesn't get cited. If they receive a repeat citation, then 3 years after that second one, they have to account for how they're handling the problem. It gives them 9 years, which seems incredibly generous to me, but we're going to make it easy on them. So, Alistair, do you have anything to add that I didn't cover on that?
No, I think you nailed it for sure.
Okay, and so we're gonna discuss the amendment and possibly take up the amendment. If I'll take a motion or questions on it. Come on, speak, somebody. I see Delegate Fair has his hand up. Is that a motion or is that a question?
It's just a question to understand the 9-year. If somebody with some knowledge about how we got there, we're giving obviously a big breadth, a 6-year audit plus a 3-year, term to repair these issues. Do they know how they came to that?
Well, the 6-year cycle is already in place, so I don't think the sponsor wanted to actually address shortening that or changing that. And then the idea is that they would have their own time to repair, and hopefully in the next audit, the same problem would not be apparent. And hopefully they would have taken it up, they would have fixed it before 6 years elapsed. But if 6 years have elapsed and the same problem, they get a repeat citation, then it's like, okay, now it's time for you to address it. And so she wrote in 3 years for that. And that's where we are.
And I would just say, oh, sorry.
Just quickly.
I'm sorry. I'll come back to you, Delegate Fair. Sorry about that.
My jurisdiction has a repeat finding. So if we pass this law, how does it impact if you've already got a repeat finding?
This is a question for the law expert. Is it retroactive, Alistair?
Is it ex post facto?
Yeah. Retroactive, ex post facto, throwback.
It's not retroactive. I think that it's just whenever you're in the 3-year cycle, if there's a repeat finding. So if there was a repeat finding and that was found the 3rd year of the 6-year cycle, I should say. So if there was a repeat finding, last year or something, and we passed this bill this year, then by the 3rd year, they'll have to address it.
So it would be retroactive if they've been in the cycle and have had a repeat finding. They need to step up. And
yeah, prospectively from now for the 3rd year. But yeah,
if we go back to 2018 and they had a finding, and now in 2024 they have another one. Now, even though that happened in 2018, they're going to have to, in the next 3 years, they're going to have to explain how they resolve the repeat finding. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I just wanted to say to Delegate Fair's question, there's already in place a lot of reporting requirements on these audits. They're extensively covered by the Office of Legislative Audits. Whenever an audit is reported, the Office of Legislative Audits has to do a report and explain whether each item addressed by the audit has been adequately addressed by whichever entity is audited. And none of that is changing this bill. It's just adding on top of that, if there is a repeat finding for a local school system, that they have to address it in the 3rd year to the Joint Committee on Audits and within the General Assembly.
Looks like they're satisfied. Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was sitting on the audit committee for 4 years on our school board. So every time we see some findings, unfortunately, depending on the superintendent and their administration say, okay, we want to address that. And the board may push for it, but eventually it's the superintendent role. And unfortunately, superintendent tenure in general pretty short, right? So I just wonder how eventually they will fall to the school board or the school system if they couldn't address repeated findings. Because findings have different level of problem. Some findings may be pretty easy to address. Some findings may be the long-term issue. Are we able to differentiate that?
Differentiate? No, I don't think so. I think the bill just says if they have a finding that needs to be addressed, they have to address it in the
Or
next.
the
the next
other,
six or
the other
seven.
question, Mr. Chair, it's when we say address, right? It can be different level how to address it. Some really just solve the problem. Some other maybe just we say we pay attention to this issue. We'll continue work on that.
Well,
is
the
that
next
kind
audit,
of
the
address?
next audit should not show that as an issue, or it's a repeat finding.
I see. I agree with Delegate Fair. It's 9 years, pretty long. So
Yeah.
but I will accept what it has.
All right. I know, I thought too, but since we have a 6-year cycle and I said, why don't we just do it right away? And it was explained that would be putting a lot of pressure on somebody to report back in 3 years on something they need to correct. Any other questions on the amendment? Okay, do I have a motion?
Move favorable.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye or raising your hand so I can see it. Thanks, and it looks like we are unanimous on that. I don't know why my hand goes up when I do that. On the bill as amended, do I have a motion or any discussion?
Favorable.
I have a favorable motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the bill as
I'll go
amended?
first this time.
I'm sorry, Brianna, you need to
You
mute
can do the
yourself,
technical.
please. Brianna, thank you. All in favor of the motion as the bill is amended, please raise your hand. And we are unanimous on that. Okay, thank you all very much. Next bill is House Bill 730. It's a bill we've heard a couple of times. It's got a nice long title. It's called Public Middle Schools Instructive Program on Collateral Consequences of Criminal Conviction. This bill actually would have required a curriculum for students to understand what happens to them if they get arrested and get put in jail, how they sort of end up in what we like to refer to, although there was some objection to it, the prison pipeline. We have amended the bill to make it far simpler than that. The amendment would require the State Department of Education to come up with about a half an hour presentation in whatever form they deem best, whether it be a PowerPoint or something that a staffer could go through, and we will target it, at least at this stage. Maybe we'll go deeper later, but at this stage, we'll target it to students who have been suspended from the school. We find them to be possibly the students who are at risk, and it might be good for those students to be aware of what they may be getting into. I'll take questions on the amendment or a motion on it.
Move
Move
favorable.
favorable on the amendment.
I have two people, and Edith and Delegate Patterson, sorry. I have a favorable motion from Delegate Wilkins, Vice Chair Wilkins, and from Delegate Patterson, I have a second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Got a bunch of hands, good, it's unanimous. And on the bill as amended.
Move favorable.
Favorable motion. Gonna have to have a second.
Second.
Thank
Second.
you, Delegate Fair. We have a motion. It's a smaller number of us than in committee, so somebody does always jump up. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the bill? All right, then. All those in favor of the bill, the favorable motion, please raise your hands. That's unanimous as well. Okay, so House Bill 760 carries. Now we get to House Bill 1164. This bill is for, sorry, wrong one. This is non-public schools transcripts, a prohibition on punitive measures related to student debt. What this bill essentially says in its form is that the schools as defined, non-public schools cannot withhold transcripts based on debts the student owes. And Alistair, if you want to wind around that a little more, you can. It's up to you.
Sure. It applies to just non-public schools that participate in state-funded education programs, and it mirrors the current statutory provisions preventing public institutions of higher education from preventing the release of transcripts based on a student's debt.
And I see a question, a Delegate Fair.
Not a question. I was a big fan of this when it was presented. It's pretty clear. I'd move favorable.
Okay, so we
Mr.
have a
Chair.
favorable motion to start with, and there's no amendments to this bill.
Second.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Okay, seeing none, raise your hand, please, if you're in favor of the favorable motion. We are unanimous, and so that bill will also be sent to committee for voting. Finally, we have a perhaps slightly more complicated bill, but it has a great sponsor. We're going to take a look at the community schools bill. Now, this bill is dual assigned and has already been taken up by appropriations, and it has had some amendments made to it. It will be up to us to either amend it further or kind of leave it alone and send it back to them. Alistair, could you just go into the nature of the amendments? You don't have to go into them in great detail, and then if we need to, we can go into further detail.
Sure. So the bill as a whole touches on the community school process as created by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And the amendments specify that the main thing they do is add a form for review of the community schools that is an evaluation form that is produced by the Director of Community Schools that is collected. It has a list of things that are measured at the community schools, measures of performance evaluation, measures that the community school members are having their needs met through the wraparound services provided. And that is collected each year and reported to the Department of Education and the Accountability and Implementation Board. Additionally, as the bill came in, there was a change to a funding provision, and that's been stripped out of the bill through the Appropriations Committee. And then there's a little bit of other stuff just touching on how what exactly is covered by wraparound services, the obligations of the Director of Community Schools and the Community Schools Coordinator within each community school.
And I will add that since we are, this is dual assigned and we are the policy committee, the funding that you speak to is really sort of the lane that appropriations takes on this. We can fight them, but I think they kind of understand we're doing policy. And overall, I would say that there has been a feeling that community schools probably need a little more accountability, a little more direction. And now we have finally had appointed a director of community schools at the State Department level who can help with evaluation tools, and we're requiring them to do some of that. And I see Delegate Hornberger, but I'm gonna let the sponsor go. She has anything she wants to add first.
Yes, excuse me. I wanted to mention to the subcommittee and also to the advocates who might be confused by the specific amendment around the funding for the districts that have a little bit less in terms of number of community schools, that I still do support that. And in the future, as the bill progresses, I would like to see that flexibility in the funding be added back. But with where we are right now, I would hope to not add additional amendments, and send it back to appropriations to approve. So I would like to move forward. The House version and the Senate version are going to be different. And I think we'll just need to come to the table and get on the same page with the Senate around this bill. So just wanted to mention that I will support the product of appropriations, but there is a piece that I hope that we can put back into the bill later down the road.
Thank you for clarifying that. I know you and I discussed that, and I appreciate your rationality on how we should proceed here at this point, even though you would like to see possibly some changes to the bill as it moves through. Thank you for sharing. Delegate Hornberger, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. There was a cutoff in the original bill language that you had to have so many community school eligibility before you could opt into this. Is that still there, the floor?
So
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's nothing changed in the entire funding section is struck out. So for those counties that have 40 or more community schools, there's still the ability for the County Board of Education to spend on behalf of those community schools their funds, which is current law. So
okay.
Yeah.
And then
systems that have fewer than that, 100% of the money has to follow the student to the community school.
Right. So my question is, and we have schools that are eligible to become a community school. However, our jurisdiction has chosen not to identify them as such and add that extra pin. So is there any compelling language in this bill? Because that's a big problem we're having in my jurisdiction.
Alistair, I'm going to let you answer. That's technical. I'm going to let you take that if you can.
Or is that already covered in another provision of?
I think that's covered under the current law, but I can
If we
get
could
back to you.
confirm that.
Yeah.
Good. And as you heard the sponsor say, we may not be done with this. Okay.
No, I fully
And
respect.
so,
the
and so that's
position.
something for you to keep in your pocket. Okay. And find out for sure if that's true or not as we move forward. If we feel like, if you feel like that's a provision that's not well accounted for in other parts of the blueprint.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so we actually have to move the amendments, I believe, because appropriation has sent us amendments. And so I would take a motion if we'd like, since we've held it in whole. I don't think it would be out of line for me, since you guys have an interlineated version, for us to just take a motion on the bill as amended by appropriations at this point.
I
Move
would move,
favorable.
sorry.
Yeah, let the sponsor have that one there. She
That's
gets it.
okay. It's
Well
okay,
done.
Chris.
And I have a second
appreciate you.
from Delegate Hornberger, and I appreciate that. So we have the bill as amended by appropriations before us. We have a motion and a proper second. All in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your hands. And I think Vogel's looking a little bright there, but I think I see his hand too. So that's unanimous also. And that concludes our work on the 4 bills. I thank you all for being.
Oh, wait, you
hope you had
might
time
want
to
to, I'm sorry, sir. You might want to take the bill as amended also.
Which I took it.
Oh, together. I'm sorry.
I made a chair's
apologize.
decision that since it was appropriations amendments that we would just take their amendments up unless somebody objected, and no one did. So
Okay, I apologize.
yeah, I'm glad you did. That's very good. So thank you all. I think that concludes our work today. We might have a meeting where we're going to take up as many local bills for education as we can, kind of all at once. We might do it tomorrow. Just keep your ear to the ground. There'll be nothing. The only ones we'll bring forward are ones that have been approved by delegations and that are not precedent setting. So stand by for that. We might do that before the week is out. And thank you all.